Real estate law includes many different rules and regulations that govern how property is bought, sold, used, and managed. Here's a breakdown of some key types of real estate laws and what each one does. 1. Property ownership laws. These laws define how someone can own or have rights to a property. There are different types of property ownership, like fee simple ownership, which is full ownership with the right to sell or pass down the property, and joint tenancy, which is co-ownership by two or more people with shared rights. Ownership laws also cover the process for transferring property from one owner to another, such as through a sale, gift, or inheritance. 2. Land use and zoning laws. Zoning laws determine how land can be used in certain areas. For example, they might specify which areas are for residential homes, businesses, or industrial purposes. These laws help organize cities and towns and prevent incompatible land uses like factories next to homes. They also regulate building heights, lot sizes, and the types of structures allowed. 3. Landlord-tenant laws. Landlord-tenant laws regulate the relationship between property owners who rent out space, called landlords, and the people who live or work there, known as tenants. These laws protect tenants' rights, like the right to safe and habitable living conditions, and outline the landlord's responsibilities, such as making repairs. They also cover issues like security deposits, eviction processes, and lease agreements. Real estate contracts are legally binding agreements between parties involved in a property transaction, like buying, selling, or leasing. These laws specify what needs to be included in a contract to make it valid, such as a description of the property, the price, and the obligations of each party. Contracts help prevent misunderstandings and ensure that everyone follows through on the agreement. Disclosure laws require sellers to inform buyers about certain conditions or issues with the property. This could include things like structural damage, past flooding, or the presence of hazardous materials. These laws help buyers make informed decisions and protect them from unexpected issues after purchasing a property. These laws regulate how property loans or mortgages work, including interest rates, foreclosure processes, and the rights of borrowers and lenders. Mortgage laws protect buyers by requiring lenders to fully disclose the terms of the loan, preventing predatory lending and providing rights if the buyer faces foreclosure. Foreclosure happens when a homeowner fails to make mortgage payments, and the lender takes back the property. Foreclosure laws protect homeowners by outlining the process lenders must follow, such as giving notice and opportunities to catch up on payments before the home is taken. Eminent domain laws allow the government to take private property for public use, like building roads or schools, but they must provide fair compensation to the owner. These laws ensure that private property owners are paid a fair market value when their property is needed for community projects. Environmental laws in real estate focus on protecting natural resources and public health by regulating things like waste disposal, pollution, and land use. These laws are important for developers, who may need environmental assessments or permits before building, especially if the land is in an ecologically sensitive area. Real estate licensing laws require real estate professionals, like agents and brokers, to be licensed before they can legally assist in buying, selling, or renting property. These laws ensure that agents have the proper education and training, follow ethical standards, and are accountable to a governing body if they break the rules. Adverse possession allows someone to claim ownership of land they've used openly and continuously for a certain period, even if it technically belongs to someone else. For example, if someone uses a piece of unused land as their own for a long time, they may gain legal ownership if they meet all the requirements. Title laws ensure that ownership of property is clearly recorded and transferred legally. A title is a legal document that proves ownership of a property. Title laws also protect against claims from others who may try to challenge the owner's rights. This is where title insurance comes in, which protects buyers from future ownership disputes. Real estate tax laws involve property taxes and tax obligations when buying or selling property. Property owners must pay taxes to their local government, which are often based on the property's value. There are also capital gains taxes, which may apply if someone makes a profit from selling property. These laws protect against discrimination in housing based on factors like race, religion, sex, disability, or family status. The Fair Housing Act, for example, prohibits landlords, sellers, and real estate agents from treating people differently based on these protected characteristics. In short, real estate law includes various rules that protect property rights, define ownership, regulate transactions, and ensure fair practices in housing and property use. Each law works to create a fair, safe, and structured process for handling property. Property ownership laws are the rules that define how people can legally own, transfer, or use property. They cover the different ways to hold ownership, the rights of property owners, and the legal methods for transferring property from one person to another. Here's a closer look at what these laws include. Types of ownership fee. Simple ownership. This is the most complete form of property ownership. The owner has full rights to use, control, and transfer the property as they choose. They can also pass it down to heirs. This type of ownership is the most common in residential property. Joint tenancy. This is a type of co-ownership where two or more people own a property together with equal rights. A key feature of joint tenancy is the right of survivorship. If one owner dies, their share automatically goes to the remaining owners rather than being passed down to heirs. Tenancy in common. In this type of ownership, each owner has a specific share of the property that can be unequal. Unlike joint tenancy, there's no right of survivorship. Each owner can pass their share to their heirs, or sell it independently. Tenancy by the entirety. This form of ownership is available only to married couples. Both spouses share equal ownership and neither can sell their share without the other's consent. It also includes the right of survivorship, so if one spouse dies, the other automatically becomes the sole owner. Community property. In some states, property acquired during a marriage is considered community property, meaning both spouses own it equally. Each spouse has a 50% interest, and if the marriage ends, the property is usually divided equally. Property rights possession, the right to physically occupy and control the property. Use and enjoyment, the right to use the property for legal activities like living, renting, or farming, and enjoy it without interference. Exclusion, the right to control who can enter the property. Owners can allow or deny access to others, including the government, except in specific circumstances like emergencies or legal processes. Disposition, the right to sell, lease, or transfer the property to someone else. Control, the right to alter or develop the property, like building a house, garden, or business on it, subject to zoning and local regulations. Title and deeds. Title. A title is the legal concept of ownership. It represents the rights an individual has to a property. When someone holds the title, they legally own the property and can transfer ownership to others. Deed. A deed is the physical document that transfers ownership of property from one person to another. It must be signed and typically recorded with the local government to make the transfer official. General warranty deed guarantees that the seller has the right to transfer the property and that there are no hidden claims against it. Quitclaim deed transfers whatever interest the seller has in the property, but doesn't guarantee that the seller has full ownership or that there are no claims against it. Special warranty deed guarantees that the seller has not created any claims or liens on the property while they owned it, but doesn't guarantee against prior claims. Encumbrances and liens. Encumbrances. These are restrictions on the property that can affect the owner's use or transfer rights, such as easements, leases, or covenants. For example, an easement might allow a neighbor to use part of the property to access their own land. Liens. A lien is a legal claim against a property, often as collateral for debt. Common liens include mortgage liens, tax liens, and mechanics liens for unpaid work or materials on the property. Liens must typically be resolved before a property can be sold. Transfer of ownership. Property can be transferred through various means. Sale. The most common way to transfer property ownership, where the buyer and seller agree on a price, sign a deed, and record it. Inheritance ownership can pass to heirs through a will, or, if there's no will, according to state inheritance laws. Gift. A property owner can give away property without payment. However, gift taxes may apply for high-value properties. Foreclosure. If the property owner fails to pay the mortgage, the lender may take ownership and sell the property to recover the debt. Eminent domain. The government can take private property for public use, like building a road, but it must provide fair compensation to the owner. Adverse possession. Adverse possession allows someone to gain legal ownership of a property if they openly occupy and use it without permission from the actual owner for a certain period, which varies by state. Requirements typically include continuous, open, and exclusive use for the statutory period. This is often referred to as squatters' rights and is a way to legally gain ownership of abandoned or neglected property. Title insurance protects property buyers and lenders against any hidden issues with the title that could come up after purchase, like unpaid taxes, undisclosed heirs, or fraud. It ensures that if there's a problem, the insurance company will cover the financial loss or resolve the issue. In summary, property ownership laws cover everything about how property is owned, transferred, and used. They protect the rights of owners, create fair processes for property transfer, and offer ways to resolve issues when ownership or boundaries are in dispute. These laws aim to create stability in real estate transactions and protect ownership rights. Land use and zoning laws are regulations that control how land in specific areas can be used. These laws help city planners, developers, and property owners know what can and cannot be built in a certain area, and they help create organized and safe communities. They are designed to separate different types of land uses like residential, commercial, and industrial, and set standards to ensure that developments are safe, appropriate, and meet community needs. Here's a closer look at the main parts of land use and zoning laws. Types of zoning. Residential zoning. This type of zoning designates areas for housing. It may include single-family homes, multifamily buildings like apartments, and sometimes townhomes or duplexes. Residential zoning often has rules about things like lot sizes, building height, and setbacks, which is how far buildings must be from the property line. Commercial zoning. Commercial zones are areas where businesses like retail stores, offices, and restaurants are allowed. Commercial zoning can vary by business type. For example, a city might have separate zones for large shopping centers, small storefronts, or office parks. Industrial zones are designated for factories, warehouses, and other industrial activities. These zones are often placed away from residential areas to minimize noise, traffic, or pollution affecting nearby homes. Agricultural zoning. This type of zoning is for land used for farming, livestock, and other agricultural purposes. It may include restrictions to protect farmland from being used for commercial or residential development. Mixed-use zoning. Mixed-use zones allow for a blend of residential, commercial, and sometimes industrial uses in the same area. This type of zoning is often used to create walkable neighborhoods with homes, businesses, and amenities close together. Zoning codes and ordinances. Zoning codes. Zoning codes are detailed local rules that explain how each type of zone can be used. They cover things like what kind of buildings can be constructed, how tall they can be, how much parking is required, and where they should be located on the property. Ordinances. These are local laws that formally set the zoning rules and regulations for a particular area. Ordinances are created by local governments and outline zoning categories, restrictions, and any special requirements like landscaping or noise control. Zoning variances. A variance is a special exception to the zoning rules. If a property owner wants to use their property in a way that doesn't fit the zoning requirements, they can apply for a variance. For example, a homeowner might seek a variance to build a taller fence than normally allowed. Variances are granted on a case-by-case basis by local zoning boards, which consider if the variance would benefit the community or harm neighboring properties. Conditional use permits allow a property owner to use the land in a way that is generally not allowed in the current zoning but may be approved under specific conditions. For instance, a church or school might be allowed in a residential area with a conditional use permit, as long as it meets certain requirements to minimize impact on neighbors, like providing sufficient parking. These permits are also reviewed by zoning boards, which may impose conditions like limits on hours of operation or noise. Building codes are regulations that ensure buildings meet safety and structural standards. They apply to all types of construction and cover aspects like electrical wiring, plumbing, fire safety, and materials. Building codes often work hand in hand with zoning laws to ensure that new buildings are safe, appropriate for their location, and consistent with the area's development goals. Zoning laws may include environmental regulations to protect natural resources like wetlands, floodplains, or forests. Developers might need to conduct environmental impact studies, especially for large projects, to assess how a development will affect the local ecosystem. Safety regulations can address concerns about hazards, such as fire-prone areas, seismic risks, or landslide zones where stricter building standards might be required. Subdivision regulations. When a large parcel of land is divided into smaller lots for sale or development, subdivision regulations apply. These rules ensure that the new lots have proper infrastructure such as roads, sidewalks, water supply, and sewage systems. Local governments enforce subdivision regulations to create organized, accessible neighborhoods and to avoid problems like traffic congestion or inadequate utilities. Historic preservation zoning. In areas with historic buildings or landmarks, historic preservation zoning protects these sites from being altered or demolished. Owners of historic properties may be required to get special permission before making changes to ensure the property's historic character is preserved. These rules help protect the cultural heritage of an area and maintain its architectural history, sometimes allowing only renovations that keep the building's original style. Planned Unit Development, or PUD. A PUD is a type of zoning that allows for a planned community with a mix of uses, like residential, commercial, and recreational spaces, in a single development. PUDs often allow more flexibility than traditional zoning and can include parks, schools, shops, and different housing types all in one community. PUDs are often used to create neighborhoods with a balanced mix of homes, services, and public spaces, designed in a way that promotes community interaction and reduces the need for long commutes. Rezoning and zoning amendments. Property owners or developers can request a rezoning if they want to use their land in a way not permitted by the current zoning. For example, a residential property owner might request a rezoning to allow commercial use if the area is becoming more business-oriented. Zoning amendments are changes to zoning rules, usually enacted by local governments, to address changing needs in the community or to support new development trends, like mixed-use neighborhoods. Eminent domain and land use. Eminent domain is the government's right to take private property for public use, as long as they provide fair compensation to the owner. This power is sometimes used for infrastructure projects like highways, schools, or parks. Eminent domain may also support broader land use goals, such as creating public spaces or improving infrastructure, but it must follow legal guidelines to ensure owners are fairly compensated. Why land use and zoning laws matter. Community organization. By separating areas for housing, business, and industry, zoning laws help create organized and functional communities. Property value protection. Zoning laws can protect property values by ensuring that incompatible land uses, like heavy industry next to residential homes, are kept separate. Environmental protection. Land use laws can protect natural areas, ensure responsible development, and prevent environmental degradation. Public safety and health zoning and building codes help create safe living environments by requiring that developments meet health, safety, and accessibility standards. In summary, land use and zoning laws are essential for guiding development in a way that benefits the community as a whole. They set boundaries for what can be built, where, and how, helping cities and neighborhoods grow in an organized, sustainable, and safe manner.